Yo, so today's video is your boy. Nah, we ain't about to start like that. We ain't about to start like that. I feel like that's what everybody else do. That's not me. I'm not trying to be like everybody else. I'm trying to be me. Now, I ain't about to get into a big tangent about being yourself. We here to get on these charts. And we here to learn, we here to get better. We here to improve every day. Like, you might not be all the way there with your trading yet, but, as long as you just get a little bit better every day, you're going to get there at some point. Now, understandably, taking back steps can happen, and you don't want to do that. You want to minimize. But again, I'm getting out of point. So look, today's video, we're going to be talking about market structure. All right, we're going to be talking about how to identify market structure. Let me bring my face up, so y'all can look me in the eye when I'm talking. Today, I'm going to be talking about market structure. I'm going to be showing you guys how to identify higher lows, higher highs, lower lows, the difference between, internal structures and external structures, or even just yeah, I'm gonna be showing y'all the difference between internal structures, external structures, how to do higher highs, how to do higher lows, and even get into how to play a reversal. Pause. Res- so yeah, I'm gonna be talking about higher highs, higher lows, lower lows, and maybe even get a little bit into actual market structures, maybe like double tops and double bottoms, but only for the purpose of showing you how the market structure could change over. So, things like head and shoulders could also happen. But we're going to get straight into it. So, the market moves in waves, right? So, in any given market, you're going to see something like this, right? It's never just going to be, I entered in down here and then whatever the case, it flew all the way up here and that's that. That's not how a market moves at all, right? It might move in that overall direction, but what the market's actually going to look like is a bunch of highs, higher lows, highs, higher lows, highs, higher lows, and highs, right? In order to achieve this. Why? Because there's constantly a fight over where people think the price should go. But so long as there are more people believing that the market should be buying, the overall price is going to go up. And it's because overall there are more passive buyers in the market than there are passive sellers. And then at these little dipping points right here, there's more aggressive sellers in the market than aggressive buyers. But overall, the passive buyers are have more money in the market to keep the market moving up. So then the sellers take over and say, you know what? Or people who were buying switch over to the sell side and say, you know what? This price is actually overbought. This isn't a fair value for, the currency that we're trading right now. So we're going to sell this market back down and we're going to start to see it make new structure levels, lower lows, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs, and lower lows, right? And I don't want to overcomplicate this, but there's going to be internal structures and external structures. So again, the market doesn't move straight up like this. It doesn't do that. So even when you see these lines straight up, it doesn't do that. These lines straight down, it doesn't do that. It doesn't do these straight lines. That's not how the market moves. Because in between these, we have internal structures where it's doing things like this. And then it finally pulls back. And then it comes back up. All right? Bunch of smaller structures. Something like this, right? There's a bunch of smaller structures inside of these bigger moves. So when we're looking at this, we have to first identify what are the major structure levels and we have to identify what are the minor structure levels or the internal structure levels. We're not looking at the internal structure levels and being like, oh, well, the momentum's changing over. Now, the momentum isn't changing over yet. If anything, it's changing over on a smaller time frame, but the overall structure of the market hasn't changed. Though this is still a higher low, higher high. All right, it comes back down to the lows, makes new highs. Higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. All right. And then we pull that, and that's how the chart basically looks as far as structure wise. Now, we could pull different market structures out of this, of course, but that's what we're looking at. But until these certain structure points are broken, per se, this one, right? Momentum's not changing over, right? Then it makes new highs, right? But until this structure is broken right here, it's still up. It makes a higher low. Until this structure is broken, it's still up. All right, it makes another higher low. Until this structure is broken, it's still up. And then at some point, what do we see happen? All right, so if I was to put this back over here, we're going to see that at some point the market decided to, can I do that? No, I can't. All right. We see at some point the market did decide to actually break these lows just like that. So now when we bring this back over here, we see what happened. This broke the higher low. Now it's making new lows. So now the market structure has changed over. Okay, so how do we know when the market starts to pull back, right? Because obviously I went on here and just said it pulled back here, pulled back there. For me, I judge my pullbacks based off of this one rule. Anytime the market, let's say it's making, for me, my white candles are buying candles, my black candles are selling candles. At any moment when the market decides to pull back, let's say this little doji candle we have right here, if the market doesn't engulf this candle, it is now a pullback. It has to engulf that candle no matter how you slice it. So even right here, we see this candle drop down. It doesn't re-engulf it, pullback started. Right here, we see the doji candle, market doesn't engulf the candle, pullback started. We see right here even, market doji candle didn't engulf this candle, pullback has started. And that's how I judge my higher lows and my higher highs. So if the market was to engulf the candle, then I wouldn't consider it a higher low point or a lower high point. So let's find an example where that does happen. All right, so we see right here, the market is falling down. We could say it's in a seller's market. The market makes basically a spinning top candle. If this next candle doesn't engulf it, this would have started a pullback for me, even if it was only for a couple pips and stay within this range. But being that it did engulf down, this is not a pullback. It's a continuation, right? Then we see down here what happens. It created a spinning top again. If it doesn't engulf it, it's a pullback. If it does engulf it, it's continuating. So we see that it actually did not engulf the candle. So it started to pull back. So when I see that, this is how I'm going to draw my zones now. All right, because what we do is we have to identify our higher highs and higher lows. But at these higher highs and higher lows are also levels of support and resistance. So I'm going to draw my zones, right? Everybody's going to draw their zones a little differently. I'm going to draw my zones with the wicks. All right, the other option as well. If this market is flying up and then the next candle re-engulfs that whole candle, that's a pullback for me as well. Let me see if I can find a quick example of that. Well, I guess I could say right here, this one right here, boom. This was going up, it was going up, it was going up. It didn't do the spinning top and then not engulf it. It just completely engulfed down. It broke the lows of the previous candle. So once it breaks the lows of the previous candle and closes, for me, that's also considered a pullback. So in this case scenario, what do we have? We had this break below the closing prices of the previous candle, making a higher low. It didn't continue by engulfing this spinning top. Instead, it continued to go up. So this became a higher low. Now, when I draw all my structures based off of how I trade my strategy, you could do this on any time frame. You could do it on the 15, 5, the 1 hour, the daily, the 4 hour. It all depends on how you want to adopt your strategy, whether you want to be a scalper, a swinger. It all depends on how you want to enter the markets. But I'm going to do all of my structures on the 4 hour and then go to the lower time frames for my entries. So again, you could do it on any time frame. But I have my higher low here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the close, right, of the body and bring it down to the bottom of the wick, right? Any pullback has at least 2 candles, right? In order to start a pullback, it has to have 2 candles. So right here, we have the initial candle that brought it down and the candle that started to push it back up. Now, you're not going to know this is a higher low until it starts to actually push up. So even when the market got to around right here, right, say the market pulled down and made a higher low, it starts to come back up until the market really got to like right here. It's like, okay, well, this is a potential higher low. This market does not become a higher low, right? This doesn't become a real higher low until it gets back up and closes at these highs or higher. If it comes up and let's say this wicked out right here and this decided to actually drop down as opposed to go up. So when this came up and it came up to like right here and it didn't get up to the highs, and then let's say it would have fell back down, technically this is not a higher low. Why? Because it didn't lead to a new high. It didn't even lead back to the highs, right? So that is not a higher low. It's basically, this is a longer term pullback, right? That we can get into a structured video later, but I just want to go over how to identify highs and lows. And yeah, I just want to go over how to identify highs and lows so you can be able to at least identify the direction of the market, all right? So as of right here, we would have had the higher low. And then again, when we go to draw the zone for the higher high, we need at least 2 candles. So we have the candle that got up to the high, and then we have the candle that started the pullback. So these two candles is how I'm gonna draw my zone from the close of the body up into the highest part of one of those wicks. So being that this was the highest wick from this candle, I just brought it up to the highest of this. If it was from the highest wicks or from this candle, I would have brought the zone all the way up to the highest wicks of that candle. All right. Now, until it breaks this zone down here, this is still the higher low. And until it breaks this zone up here, this is still the higher high. How do I identify a break? I identify a break. Again, I have two portions to my trading strategy, but one of them is identifying momentum. So how do I identify a momentum break? I need at least 3 candles to close below the wicks of the zone. So when I draw my zone, basically it's going to be down to the bottom of the wick. So until it closes 3 candles below the zone, the momentum is not changed over. This can fall below 1, fall below a lot more 2, and then fly all the way back up into this area. That's not a break of momentum for me. Now, it might be a break of structure, right? But it's not a break of momentum. Therefore, this higher low will still respect it and the market is still going up. That is how I identify my structure, right? So we see that it made a higher low, higher high, higher low. It broke the highs 1, 2, 3 candles. This is a new high. We draw our new zone. Why is this our new zone? Because we see the market pulled back with a spinning top or even an inside bar candle. We see it didn't engulf the candle consecutively right after, right? Consecutive right after is a dumbass sentence. But we see that it didn't re-engulf that candle immediately. So that starts the pullback. Then we see it drop down. What do we have happen? This. It retests this previous higher high. But how do we know now where this area becomes a higher low at? So we see that this candle here, it drops down, and we see this engulf the candle. Now, usually you're just like, you know what? Oh, that's the sign of that the market is changing directions, because usually it would be if the market doesn't re-engulf the candle, then it's going to continue. But if it does re-engulf the candle, that means it's reversing. So when we see this happen, we see it re-engulf the candle, we're like, okay, well, this is the new higher low. But no, it's not a higher low until it closes at the highs of this zone or it closes higher. Now, we see this broke 1, 2 candles. This is not a higher high, but look what happened. This would be our new higher low if this was to make higher highs. As we can see, this broke for 1, came back under, broke for 1, 2, 3 candles, right? So now this becomes our new higher low. Why is this our new higher low as opposed to this being our new higher low? Because even though this one did come down and come back up to the highs and make this higher low, when this got up to the highs, it also dropped down and made a higher low inside of it and came back up. So anytime price is looking, let's say we have our level right here, right? And then we have something like a squeezing, like an ascending triangle, right? We have it drop down, come down to here, come back up to the highs, right? This was our higher low because it got back up to the highs. It closed at least at the highs. Then we see it come back down again, higher low, and it closed back up at the highs. Being that it closed back up at the highs again, right, that makes this a new higher low. Why? Because it continues to close at the highs. Each time it closes back at the highs, you got to go to the previous point, and that becomes the higher low. How do you identify the previous point? Well, it's the point that started off the move, right? You're going to see a lot of internal structures, and it's going to take time. One video right now isn't going to get you the whole gist of how to draw, you know, perfect structure. So you're going to have to continue to watch more videos and continue to learn and take notes. But it's going to be from the previous structure that pushed it up back into that point. That's going to be the higher low, even though we're going to see smaller points inside of here. All right, none of these got back to the high. So this isn't a new high. This isn't a new high. This isn't a new high. This isn't even a new high. So all of these potential higher low points are really just internal structures stemming from this initial point that pushed it up before it previously had pulled back, looking like this, basically like something like this. All right, internal structures inside the overall structure. This is the area where it finally just pushed off at and it got back to the high. So this is where my higher low would be at. Let me know in the comments if I'm talking too fast. Let me know in the comments if I am confusing. Let me know what I can do to improve. so y'all can better understand this. But again, we have the higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. Each time it gets back to the highs, drops down. If it makes a higher low point and gets back up to the highs, that is now a new higher low point. If it does not get back to the highs, that is not a higher low point. It has to get back to the highs, right? Even vice versa. If this was to break through these lows, right, this would have to get back up to the highs. And then what will happen here? This would be the new higher low point. This is the new structure point, right? This is the new structure point. Now, it might not be a momentum break. It might have only stayed below here for a candle or two, but this is the new structure point down here. Momentum didn't change over. It just made a new structure point. It could be pointing toward and making new lows with the structure, because the structure and the momentum are two different things that you have to use simultaneously to build a edge in the market. But this will be the new higher low point. All right. We're going to start by looking at the market. Where are we? All right, let's just say we're right around here. All right, we're going to start with the initial point. Now, this is a perfect example for what I'm saying previously. So we have this as a high, whether it's from the seller's market perspective or a buyer's market. It all depends on where it came from. All right, we have this as a low. All right, why did I draw these zones like that? Because it closed here, re-engulfed the candle, which initiated the pullback. We're going to draw the zone based off the two candles that initiated the pullback. This one right here, it re-engulfed this candle, right? We're going off of the closes, not the wicks. So once it closes higher than the previous candle, that's an engulfing candle. We draw the zone based off those two candles and its wicks, right? So now we have it like that. We have this come up to these highs. It dropped below these lows, even though it didn't break as far as momentum would be considered. But we do have a new structure point, just like that. And then we're going to draw it based off the two candles that pulled it back, which would be these two. Now, the only reason I'm changing this zone over now is because I can see it in hindsight. If this wasn't in hindsight, I would have had to wait until this market pushed all the way back up to these highs for me to acknowledge that this is actually a new structure point, because from here it led all the way to the highs. Now this isn't right here. This, let me see. Now this isn't a high. This isn't a higher low. It's an internal structure, higher high and higher low, but it's not the overall major higher high, higher low. This isn't a high. This isn't a low. This isn't a high. This isn't a low. These are the highs, and down here are the lows. All of these are internal structure points. So until it breaks these highs or these lows, these structures are going to hold for whatever the momentum might be in the market. Now, if I had to look at this right now and determine what the structure is, I would say it's down. Why? Because we had a double top here. This became the highs. This became the lows. It pulled back up toward the highs. It made new lows. So right now we're in a seller's market. So until it breaks this high, this is a seller's market. Now we're going to have hints as we go along. As we can see, it came back up to the highs, and then what did it do? As I talked about before, it dropped down to make a higher low. It dropped down to make a higher low. It did not close within the highs of this candle. So this is not a higher high. This is not a higher low. This is not a higher high. It came all the way back down to here and then pressed up. So once this got up to here, being that this didn't break through the lows of this wick here, right, of these two candles that initially pulled it back, this became the low point, the new higher low point, and this became the consistent higher high point. Then we see it, right, it gets back up and it closes within this zone again. And then what do we see? We see it pull back, which initiated the pullback. It engulfed this previous candle after touching the highs. And then what does happen from there? It doesn't continue to fall down. It starts to buy back up. So we take these two candles from the initial point in which the market reversed, and we draw a new zone. This is going to be our new higher low, right? So we have a higher low here, or we have a structure point here. We have a new higher low here, and we have a new higher low here before it finally broke out. Now, what does that look like in a simpler way as opposed to looking at this chart? We're going to see this zone here. Oh, we're going to see a zone here, right? Which is this blue zone there. And then we're going to see it basically, it did something similar to like this. All right. All right, each time that it reached these highs, it was able to make a new structure point. Reach the highs, this is the higher low. Reach these highs, this is the higher low. Reach back to these highs, this is the higher low. All right, and then at any point, if it had broken that, then the structure would reverse over. So what do we have? Um, let's just start here, right? So we got a lower high. It gets down to the previous lower low and it breaks through, which confirms this as the new lower high. It continues to fall. What happens here? Is this a pullback or is it not a pullback? It is a pullback, right? For like Dora or something for real. It is a pullback. Why? Because it created the spinning top and it didn't completely engulf it, right? So for me, that becomes a pullback and these become the highs, the lower high, the new lower high. And this is the lower low. All right. Then we see it get back down and break these lows. Again, this isn't a break. These two candles is not a break of the structure nor momentum. But once it did 1, 2, 3, now it's a break and it pulled back. Why is it a pullback? Because the next candle after this spinning top here did not engulf. So it started the pullback, which makes this the new lows. We take the two candles from the point of which it started to pull back. We draw it from the close of the body all the way down to the bottom of the lowest wick of the two candles. And that makes this the new lower low. It pulls back up. It makes a potential lower high. It actually ends up closing back down at this zone, which confirms this as the new lower high. Boom. We see it get back up here. It did not break structure, nor did it break momentum. So this held as the lower high. And then it made new lows once again. It starts to pull back. These two candles right here re-engulfed the candle, right? It made the small spinning top candle and it re-engulfed it. So that began the pullback. We draw our zone down to from the close of the body down to the lowest point of the wicks of either candle. It doesn't break the structure. It continues to pull back. It actually pulled right back up to our previous level of, basically the retest, which was our previous lower low, and then it continued to fall. This only became a lower high after this candle closed down in here, confirming this as the lower high. And then we basically continue on like that. All right. So the main points that we have here, all right, to sum all this up and to make sure I didn't forget anything. When it comes to drawing structure, you have external points, you have internal points. Until the external points are broken, the structure is not broken. The momentum is not broken, right? Either one of those are not broken. There's going to be internal structures inside these larger moves, inside these larger structures. But until they reach the points, the either poles of the structure, then you can't really say that this is a higher low or that this is a lower high or that this is basically a higher low or a lower high. Why? Because it can easily just reverse back down. So if we're looking at something like this, it's creating a triangle, right? This is the low, this is the high. All of this is just internal structures. It never reached the high, so this can't be a higher low. It never reached the low, so this can't be a lower high, right? So the internal structures, until they reach either pole, you're not re-identifying any new higher lows or lower highs. In order to consider it a break, it needs to break at least 3 candles, right? Meaning that if it comes within this lower, like was my zone over here, right? Or was it? Well, let's say right here. This is my zone here. Boom. Because it began its pullback with an engulfing of the previous candle. Until it breaks out 3 candles from the lowest point of this wick, which is basically 3 candles out from this zone, it is not a break. This right here only was 2 candles. Within the second candle, it came back up. It is not a break. 1, 2, 3. It did 3 candles. So now this is considered a break, and this is the new lower high. Why is this the new lower high? Because it made a lower high here, came down, closed within the zone, tried to push back up, made another lower high after it began its pullback, and then it broke through. So this is the new lower high, and until it breaks this for 3 candles, it is not a flip over. Now, as we can see, it did end up breaking over here, which would have been like so we had 1, 2 candles, higher low, Then we have 1, 2, 3, and then on the fourth candle it came back under. So this would have been the new higher low right here for the new structure. This would have been the new highs, right? This would have been the new highs. This would have been the higher low. I would have missed this initial part of the sell down because of the break here. But once it broke under this for 1, 2, 3 candles, I would have been looking sells again because it just broke the higher low again. So, all right. Internal structures, external structures, there's going to be higher lows, lower highs until it gets back to those either of those points. There can't be any new structures made. We have the breaks of these structures. Until it breaks 3 candles, it is not a break. If it comes back within that zone at all, it is not a break of the zone. Now, this is just a higher low, higher high video in order to get you understanding the direction of the market. Obviously, there's a lot more pieces that go into being a profitable trader. This is one of those pieces that you're going to need moving forward if you want to begin to make money consistently. Again, drop down in the comments how I did as far as teaching. I'm going to look to get better as far as brevity, saying things, in a lot shorter, but getting the key points off. I'm going to work on my speech a little bit, even though it's not terrible. I'm going to just work to, be better, to bring y'all knowledge, and obviously, just work on my craft. But let me know in the comments what y'all think, if y'all got any value out of this video, if I helped you, and if you have any video ideas for what you think I should do next. Until then, keep working hard, keep trading, keep grinding, man. Your time is coming. And don't think just because you're trading and you're doing the bare minimum, you're going to get it. Now you're slowing your time down. Keep working hard, put in them restless nights, stay up late, go to wake up early, do what you got to do. If you're working a full-time job, you got to work that full-time job. And then when you're not at the full-time job, you got to be full-time on trading. So, it's going to be a grind. You got to work hard, but it's all going to be worth it in the end. Until next time, man, y'all stay easy.